Hello, hello, hello. This is Ben West coming at you live from Toronto. Welcome to the Great Climate Race Live, episode number 4. Apologies today for having to reschedule things a couple of different times, but we are back on track, coming at you live today, again from Toronto. We are actually about to leave for Prince Edward Island this weekend, which will be the next leg of our Cross Canada tour. If this is your first week joining us, thanks for joining us. Great Climate Race Live. It's our weekly show every Friday at 12 noon Pacific time, which is 3 in Toronto, where I am right now. And unfortunately today, just given having to get out of town, things were a little bit up in the air. So long story short is we're not starting at the same time we will every other week, but next week we'll be coming back to you at the same time. We have a big show for you this week. Again, as usual, this show is being brought to you by the Great Climate Race. We're on our way across Canada, doing interviews and profiles of different people involved in renewable energy. We've got 2 great interviews for you today that I'll tell you about in a second. We're also out there going for runs and walks with all kinds of different run clubs and individuals, raising money for a renewable energy project. The one we're raising money for right now is for the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. More on that later. If you are interested in following our tour, go to the Great Climate Race website, greatclimaterace.org. You can enter your name in a little sign-up form there, and you'll get more updates as we go. Or you can just simply watch us on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Snapchat. We're everywhere. The Great Climate Race tour, doing all kinds of stuff to raise awareness about climate change, renewable energy, and talking about what we can do to try to address this problem by raising money for renewable energy projects, raising awareness. Okay, this week on our show, give me 1 second just so I can move my little face out of the way. It's bugging me. There you go. Every week I get better and better at using this software. By the way, if anybody's interested in how we're doing this, I get this question a lot. We are using a piece of software called Ecamm Live. It's a great little piece of software that gives you the ability to share your screen, play videos, that kind of thing. Ecamm Live, if you want to do this yourself. So, this week we are going to talk about the question of the week, which you may have seen on the title. That is probably what you clicked on to come here. The question of the week is climate change responsible for the BC wildfires, or is it making it worse, to put it another way? Also, we're going to talk about innovative approaches to financing renewable energy. Every week we talk about something that we think is exciting, interesting, innovative. We'll give you an update every week on what's going on with the Great Climate Race Tour and with the lead up to our next big international virtual race in the end of October. And we'll try to deal with at least one big question of some kind. So, you ready to get right into it? As usual, I will be ready to take your questions at any time. If anybody is out there watching and you want to type in your questions, I'll either get to them live if I can, or after the fact, we'll definitely post all the feedback, responses, everything we can directly in the comments. You'll also be able to find all the references, all the show notes, right in this thread after the broadcast is over, as well as on our blog on our website. The weekend after the show, we post it all on the website. Okay, cool. So, it has been a particularly scary time in British Columbia as of late. I'm not going to be one of those guys who just reads a slide to you, but what's important to understand is that we have at least 150 fires burning in the province of BC. The news story that I'm quoting here was as of Tuesday morning. There were a total of 675 fires documented since the beginning of 2017, 27 currently considered fires of note by the Wildfire Service. 15 of those are threatening communities, and that's what's particularly scary about what's going on right now is actually how close to many cities these fires have been. Of course, for anybody who's been watching this, you've seen the pictures on television, and in the newspaper and whatnot showing, people being evacuated. We're actually up to over 45,000 people, if you can believe that, being evacuated, and a total estimated area that's been burned now over 3,000 square kilometers, and this is from Tuesday, so my assumption is that that number is bigger. There has been some rain that's passed through BC yesterday and today, although from what I understand, not nearly enough, and there's some fears that there actually may be increased wind and potentially even some more lightning, which has been the source of some of these fires. So This is a map that you can find on the Government of BC's website that shows areas of significant fires of note. This is only showing those 20 or so fires that are particularly concerning, and I think these are the ones in particular that are threatening places where people live. But just to give you a bigger picture, this is another map that I found off a local news site. I believe this was from CBC, that shows all the different fires that have been identified burning in this calendar year. A lot of fire. It's scary to see, and of course for anybody who remembers Alberta, what was that last year in the Fort McMurray area, and British Columbia a couple of years ago, this is increasingly an issue that we're seeing all over the province. So, clearly something is going on here. Fires are not something new in the province, but what we're going to get to is, what is the impact on climate change on these fires, if any? And I think this is an important moment to be talking about this. Let's, of course, not forget that right now my face is in the way of the news stories. Here, hold on one second. I'm going to do one more thing, and then I promise I will just continue going along. You're going to lose my face here, sorry, but maybe it'll just be better that way. All right. This week, Premier Horgan has extended the state of emergency in British Columbia as BC deals with these wildfires. One of the very first things that the new Premier of British Columbia did, I'm pretty sure, was basically the first press conference he did as Premier, other than the speech that he gave right after being sworn in, was this early morning announcement. You can see there that it was, was posted on the 19th. This was basically the extension of the state of emergency. BC's now been in a state of emergency for 2 weeks. There's a fire ban all across the province, including on the island, even away from places where the fires are burning. There's just so much concern that basically the forests are so dry, that the conditions have been so hot, that we could have some serious problems. And for that reason, you're not even allowed to cook with a propane stove if you're at a campsite in British Columbia. And of course, many homes have been evacuated, and part of this announcement that you see at this press conference here is that actually the amount of money that's being offered up to people who've been evacuated through the Red Cross has been increased, which is good news because there are many people dealing with some pretty difficult situations right now, so that's important. On that note, I want to remind you, and if you don't take anything else from this broadcast, please take a moment to text the word FIRES, F-A-R-I-E-S, FIRES, to the number 45678 to donate $10 to the Red Cross. The Canadian Red Cross, again, is accepting donations. It's really easy to do. You could do it right now. Just pick up your phone and text the word FIRES, F-A-R-E-S, to the number 45678, and you will donate $10 to the Canadian Red Cross, and that money goes directly to helping people who've been impacted by the fire. Just to make it clear kind of how serious that impact is, here's just one example of a person whose home burnt completely to the ground. This is one of the more shocking photos that I found while Googling around looking at the impact of this. Important to remember that this is more than just an ecological issue. But this is something that's really affecting people's lives. And before even getting into this conversation about climate change, I wanted to make it abundantly clear that we need to not lose sight of the impact on individuals in British Columbia who have been, personally impacted by this. Not everybody who was evacuated, had this happen, but this, there have been many people who've been seriously impacted, and even those who have not had their homes burned to the ground, still need help because. Of course, imagine yourself trying to live in a hotel or, somewhere else for, now weeks at a time away from your home and your possessions and, the food in your fridge and all that. So, very difficult situation. Of course, there's also a lot of concern about livestock and people's animals. Some places, people had to leave before their pets were able to be taken out of their homes. So there's folks from the SPCA and other volunteers who've been going around trying to make sure that all the animals are well taken care of as well. But scary moment in British Columbia, to say the least. Also worth noting that there's serious amounts of smoke traveling in a variety of locations. In fact, Banff National Park in Alberta has been shut to campers for a while, and there was some air quality warnings that went as far as Calgary. in Alberta. So, I mean, it's worth pointing out that this is not just happening in British Columbia. And in fact, momentarily we'll talk about how this is happening elsewhere on the west coast of the United States as well. So the estimate of the number of square kilometers has increased pretty dramatically, mainly in the Chilcotin area. And the numbers suggest that the current fire season will exceed the number of fires that we've seen recently, in 2016, 2015, 2014. The year 2010 was pretty significant. It looks like we may even go past what we saw back in 2010. And over the last 10 years, I think it's very important to recognize that on average, we've seen, a pretty significant amount of burn. And that average is actually going up currently. So just to put this in kind of a wider spectrum context, it's worth pointing out, if you haven't been paying close attention to this, that there's also serious fires happening in California right now, elsewhere on the West Coast. Also, homes being evacuated. This is something that's happening on both sides of the border. This is a picture from around Orange County in California, a pretty terrifying photo of the view along this highway in an area that was also evacuated. Just a reminder that this is not simply a BC or Alberta problem. This is something that is happening in California as well. So to bring this to the question of climate change, I'm going to draw your attention to this article from the Calgary Herald. And again, all the references that I make on the show, you'll be able to find in the show notes. But for today, I just wanted to draw your attention to this particular article from the Calgary Herald with some climate scientists from the University of Calgary drawing attention to the more frequent wildfires and the problem of smoke as it relates to climate change. This is a University of Alberta forestry professor, but there's actually been a number of different folks who've been weighing in this regard, and some pretty good coverage of this, actually, which I think is important. Often when we talk about natural disasters, there's some caution around, really bringing up the issue of climate change from the scientific community, largely because you can't attribute any one particular incident to climate change. Really what we're looking at when we're talking about climate change is the number of events like this that take place, the frequency of them, the intensity of them. It's a matter of the statistics, really, of how many fires we see, how intense these fires are. But what we clearly have seen is a trend towards more and more of these kinds of incidents, more intense wildfires, more difficult situations. And that's what this professor from the University of Alberta is pointing out. Notably, this is a forestry professor highlighting that the impact of climate change in terms of the pine beetle epidemic is resulting in the pine beetle not dying off, and therefore impacting more and more of BC's forests. And that has the impact on, basically turning large portions of our forests into kindling. Also, just the dryness itself, has a big impact. The lack of precipitation in the summer months is making the fire season longer, is making these fires more intense. Fires are not a new thing on the coast, of course, but what we are seeing is more and more of them, and it's becoming a more serious problem. This has implications for insurance. We've actually seen some of the biggest insurance payouts in Canada, in recent years. In fact, the biggest one on record was in Fort McMurray, well over $1 billion. I think it's something like 1.6 billion, 1.57, something like that. What we're seeing is that this trend is continuing to go up. There was another story, again, which I'll share the reference to, which highlighted the concern that the insurance industry has in terms of the impact of climate change. This is, not even really controversial within that community. They're very aware of the implications of climate change, and are probably a little bit ahead of the curve, frankly, compared to some politicians or others, or even really where the general public is at in terms of understanding this impact, because they see it in real dollars and cents. Another thing to take into consideration, of course, is just how all of this affects the economy, and the insurance industry is acutely aware of the costs involved. This doesn't even begin to cover the costs to taxpayers in terms of the cost of fighting these fires and all the things that go into that. There's already been millions of dollars that have gone into this effort in British Columbia. We saw a tremendous amount go into this as well in Alberta and then in BC the year previous. Interesting for me, the last time I actually went on a significant trip, on a tour, was actually on a boat, a catamaran, a solar-powered catamaran that as we left from Vancouver 2 years ago, we actually sailed directly into smoke so thick that you couldn't see the mountains. These are some of the results of climate change that I think we really have just not thought carefully enough about, perhaps, or some of us may not have considered. Often when we think of environmental issues, we don't necessarily connect all the dots in terms of how this could affect us. Air quality is a serious concern, of course, and major forest fires, really affect quality of life, let alone endanger people's lives and homes and the economy and have huge costs. So the air quality question is a big one. I was glad to see that it was referenced as well in that article that I just mentioned with the University of Alberta professor. But it may very well be the case. I'm hoping that these fires are behind us by the time Mari and I and Rosie make our way back across the country and into British Columbia. But there was actually maps that showed that the smoke from these fires, if this continues, may already be reaching far across the country. We may even be seeing it as we're coming back across Canada, and we could very well be driving right into a situation like this. In fact, the area that we camped close to Ashcroft on our first night on the road is one of the areas that was pretty heavily burned. And I'm quite hopeful that the beautiful campsite that we stayed at is still there. We'll drop in and see that everything's okay there, but I'm sure it's pretty devastating for a lot of people who've been impacted, and I only can hope that we see a lot more rain in the near future, because that is the most significant thing that can really be of help right now is a significant change in the amount of rain. I want to draw your attention now to this was actually a piece from CBC's show, The Ideas, from last year, and this was an episode of Ideas that specifically looked at the Fort McMurray fire, but also connected it to fires around the world. The larger number of serious wildfires burning worldwide, and this episode, I have to say, had quite an impact on me. It was a pretty intense episode to listen to. The people who spoke on Ideas this day were foresters, people who'd been around this kind of thing for many, many years, and what they had to say was striking. I'll share a few pieces of it from their website with you. There's a little video with some pull quotes that I took some screenshots of to share with you. First, this quote here saying, it's something that I expected down the road 20, 30 years, but the last few years we're seeing it already. And this is, it's scary, is really the point that's being made here. This is Mike Flanagan from the University of Alberta, and I think that really is the critical piece of this. For many of us, we think of climate change as something that we'll experience, decades from now, not right now, and we expected, maybe 20, 30 years from now that we'd be seeing fires this scary, this intense, but actually we're seeing them today. Climate change is not a thing of the future, it's a thing we're already experiencing now, and we need to be well on our way to trying to reverse it, because we're going to be feeling the effects of it for many years. That is not to say that we still can't do something about it currently, though, and we definitely don't want to make things substantially worse. We need to take these kinds of warning signs and act on them to do something about the situation. Another quote here: if you live in a city, your house isn't going to get burned down by a forest fire, but you should be concerned because it could have a significant impact on transportation, health, economics. Again, this is Mike Flanagan from the University of Alberta. And I guess this echoes what I was just saying moments ago about, what it was like being in Vancouver, a few years ago, when the big fires were happening, around the province, over 300 of them again. Even more than the number I think that we're seeing currently, although perhaps not as many square kilometers that were affected. The smoke, thankfully, has not been quite as bad, from what I understand, in Vancouver this time around because of just the prevailing winds and the conditions and where the fires are. But it's an important reminder that even if the fire is not happening right where you live, that does not mean that you're not being affected by it in a number of different ways. Another quote that really jumped out at me, this was from an Australian fire chief, I believe, or no, sorry, this was from a mayor in Alberta. The biggest lesson, I guess, you can't beat Mother Nature, you can't tell her what to do. That really sums it up for me. I think, that we need to really respect the power of this planet. We live on this kind of Goldilocks planet where we're just the right distance from the sun. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, and we're lucky to live in such a beautiful natural environment. But it's a precarious situation, really, and all it takes is things being a wee bit out of balance. Even without climate change, natural disasters have had significant impact on human populations worldwide, of course, throughout human civilization. But we are clearly, definitely having a significant impact right now, and we need to take that very seriously. Sometimes we have a bit too much hubris as the clever monkeys that we are, with all of our technology and all of our innovation. I think sometimes we think there's really no problem that we can't solve with our technology, but the reality is that we do have to humble ourselves a bit and respect the power of the natural world that really can seriously impact us, even if you live in a big city and aren't right next to a forest fire. Climate change can impact you. Forest fires can impact you, and of course we should be concerned about all the people who aren't living in big cities worldwide who can be impacted in a number of different ways. So that is a bit of what I had to say here, other than that there are going to be more megafires. This is a fire expert from the Arizona State University. They're going to burn longer. They're going to burn more savagely, and if we do nothing, the future looks pretty bleak. I want to say that he's not just talking about doing something about climate change in this quote. If you listen to this episode of CBC Ideas, you'll hear that he talks a fair amount about fire prevention, and preparedness measures that we should be taking in terms of how we rebuild cities after significant fires, the kind of equipment, the kind of preparedness that's necessary. The thing that really struck me about this episode was, they talked about how difficult it is to fight these fires, even compared to, in the last decade or so. As these fires burn so bloody hot and, and for longer and longer, it's just very difficult to actually do much to stop them. And it's not that there is a perfect technological fix, but there's definitely things we can do in terms of how we build our cities, the kind of materials we use. And definitely as human population continues to grow and we make decisions about, where we build cities and what we build cities with, there's some steps we can take. But I would suggest, if you're interested in learning more about this, there's a lot to be said on this topic, and this episode of this program does a very good job of getting into that. I think the point that I'm trying to make here, though, as somebody concerned about climate change, is that climate change, again, is something that is happening now. It's something that's very serious. There is a connection to what's happening in British Columbia on the West Coast and elsewhere around the world. It's just one of the impacts of climate change, along with desertification and the impact on food and so many other of the health impacts that come with extreme heat. It's also worth pointing out that we had record-breaking precipitation in June in British Columbia. Thomas Friedman once rebranded global warming as global weirding. And this is often one of the things I think that's not clearly understood, is that climate change, the name climate change was chosen, instead of global warming for some, because it actually, tries to, highlight the fact that really what we're talking about is destabilizing, ecological systems. It's not just about increased heat, but how that increased temperature at the global level, throws entire systems out of whack by melting icebergs. You start seeing increased water levels, which has all kinds of implications. The systems that we rely on, again, are in a delicate balance. And can be destabilized, just like a human's health. If you have a fever of a degree or two Celsius above what it should be, throws all kinds of your natural systems out of whack, and sometimes you actually experience it as feeling cold and clammy and sweaty. Not necessarily a sensation of heat. Just to sort of use that as a metaphor to try to, compare that to what's going on the planet, it's important that we understand that, just because we have a long winter or a lot of rain, or the snowpocalypse like we've seen in recent years in Toronto or New York, that is also part of this conversation around global weirding or climate change that we need to be paying attention to. So this is a lot of pretty intense stuff, and I got to say that it's a bit different than what I often talk about in the context of the Great Climate Race, because the Great Climate Race primarily is actually focused on solutions. It's hard to know what to do about climate change. It can be overwhelming and pretty scary. But we are focused on trying to give people something that's really practical and meaningful that they can do in their own personal lives, ways that you can raise money for renewable energy projects through walking and running, and soon we're going to actually get into cycling. But, I wanted to share with you this week some interesting stories of some organizations that are finding other ways to finance renewable energy projects. This is often one of the questions that come up is like, where does the money come from to pay for these projects? Is it all tax money? Are we talking about private investments? Like, how does this all happen? The reality is that we're probably talking about all of the above. I mean, there's going to be public projects, there's private projects. But if you want to be part of this right now, there's some interesting things that you can do right now as an individual to be part of a collective approach. I'm going to share with you a couple of examples of some interesting organizations that are taking steps in this direction as we speak. So, the first one, this is a picture from the head office of Bullfrog Power in Toronto. That's me and Mari with a guy named Dave Borens, who you'll hear an interview with momentarily. We had the pleasure of visiting Bullfrog Power to do a little lunch and learn discussion about the Great Climate Race. Very much appreciate the support we've gotten from Bullfrog Power for the Great Climate Race. They've done fund matching to match the money that was raised by participants in the last 2 years, which has dramatically increased our ability to give support to some very important projects like the Creekside project near Science World that I've told you about in a previous episode. You can also find the video specifically about that from our live stream on the Great Climate Race Facebook page or our YouTube channel. But so we went and did a lunch and learn for the folks at Bullfrog Power while we were here in Toronto. I'll show you a picture from that when we get to the update. But I wanted to just give you a little sense of Bullfrog and how they do what they do. I'll share a couple of screenshots with you, and then we'll get to this video with Dave. First, from their website, just to give you a sense of what Bullfrog is up to. They've displaced about 1.3 million tons of CO2 since they began in 2005, which is about the equivalent of almost 300,000 cars being taken off the road for a whole year, which I think is pretty fantastic. To explain what they mean by displaced, Dave will discuss this too, but I just want to share with you some of the stuff directly from their website. The way that they describe this is that when you choose renewable electricity from Bullfrog, you offset your electricity use with green energy. So it's not that they actually put electricity from a solar panel directly into your house, but basically you're just purchasing a certain amount of green energy that they put onto the grid. So they actually add additional renewable energy sources, which is what gives them the ability to raise money and then spend it on new solar, wind, other kinds of projects all across Canada. And it's actually quite remarkable the number of projects they've been able to fund, and they really pick good community projects. Many of the projects they support are in support of First Nations communities, community centers, all kinds of different community organizations, and they get that funding both from individuals and from businesses who buy their power through Bullfrog Power. It's basically an additional cost on top of your normal energy bill that ensures that the power that you're using is green energy. And I think it's great. There's a lot of different businesses that take advantage of this. Some are small, some are big. Everybody from Unilever to MEC and a whole bunch of different banks and shopping malls and all kinds of different large entities, as well as some breweries and coffee shops, and there's literally thousands of different companies, as well as many individuals and homes. Whether you live in an apartment or a house, you can buy power through Bullfrog Power, and know that not only are you basically offsetting your own greenhouse gas footprint, but you're encouraging the spread of renewable energy, awareness of renewable energy all across Canada, and helping to fund some really good, worthwhile projects. This is just one example. This is one of the just to give you a sense of how much this costs. I pulled this again right off their website. They said this was their most popular plan, which is about the equivalent of 450 kilowatt hours per month. And the benefit is that you are reducing your personal carbon footprint by almost a ton a year. And again, supporting the development of green energy projects, and kind of cool thing is you get to get some special offers from some of the Bullfrog powered businesses. So it's kind of this neat community that connects the businesses that get their energy from Bullfrog with the homeowners who get their energy from Bullfrog. You get discounts and deals and all kinds of cool stuff, and really just get to be part of this nifty community. So that's $11.25 a month. If you live in an apartment building where you're not paying for electricity currently, or it's included in your rent, that's additional. It's basically a separate bill than you get from from your power provider, whomever that might be, whether it's BC Hydro or whoever you pay your energy bill to on a monthly basis, whatever province you're in. But this is a service that's offered all across Canada. And the kind of neat thing about this, I think, actually, for somebody who lives in a building is, like, let's say you want to get your energy from a green source, but, you aren't in the position to install solar panels on your roof, you don't own your home, you're a renter. This is a relatively affordable thing you can do. I mean, what is that, the cost of a Frappuccino and a half or something a month? That you can, be helping to support green energy all across Canada. They have this little, factoid at the bottom here. Did you know that about 0.9 tons of carbon is equivalent to preventing 960 pounds of coal from being burned, which is pretty significant. So that just gives you a little snapshot of what the cool folks from Bullfrog Power are doing.